Hi, it's Rachel with Stirring the Deep. There is a beautiful truth about how Christ, the Spirit of God with man, is our perfect shepherd. And in Ezekiel 34:23, he says, "And I will establish one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, my servant David. He shall feed them and be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken." The Christ said he was the good shepherd. And what that means is that he had the truth of God. Because he had the Spirit of God in him and that wisdom, and he knew how to have that breath, have that wisdom, and then give it to other people. And that process is what the bad shepherds do not know how to do. So in Ezekiel 34:10, he says, "Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against the shepherds, and I will require my flock at their hand. I will cause them to cease feeding the sheep, and the shepherds shall feed themselves no more. For I will deliver my flock from their mouths, that they may no longer be food for them." And that's what I was talking about, people being brought out of the church, that people look to pastors, to religious leaders, and of religions to shepherd them. But the problem is they aren't receiving the right truth, and they don't give it. So it's broken on both ways. And it's certainly that first one, and that's where religion can't help but create false images of God, because it's putting these predefined, created elements around God, who is spirit and infinite. Okay, so you've got to get rid of all those images and all that creates. Then you can start getting that pure wisdom and that pure truth. So that's why Christ became our good shepherd, because he's the one that coming up in us, right, becoming a part of us. That's the only way, because as long as you're on the outside receiving is something separate, you can have deception and lies, because it's always coming from the outside. But if it's coming from within out, then that's how you're not deceived. That's why God could have all these amazing powers and displays of power, and his people still went astray. You can have all these rules, all these laws, people still go astray. People still get blinded by false idols and images and all these other things, okay? And you see that throughout the Old Testament. So the way of Christ is that now that truth comes from within out. And that's why he's the perfect shepherd, because that spirit knows the pure truth of God, and he knows how to apply it to our spirit. And that's what I was talking about. Whenever you're reading the Bible in your life, you have to go to him and learn from him, because he knows how to give you that truth perfectly without corruption. He knows how to feed your soul. And that's what he goes into in these other verses. Okay, so in Ezekiel 34:11, it says, "For thus says the Lord God, Indeed, I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out." And that's what you feel. Like if you're coming out of religion or coming out of the church, it's something drawing you from within to do that. Okay? Because that's the only way you're going to leave that. If it's something, because it's such a bondage of the mind, because it plays on all these emotions, and it creates so many fears and guilt and manipulations. So it just has a very strong hold on people. And that's true with the wisdom of the world as well, right? So the only way you break away from that is from God coming himself to you. But that's where now you got to open up and respond to that, because he says, "If you return to me, I will return to you." Now's the time to return to him, that pure wisdom. Okay? And that's how you start feeling that call in your spirit. Follow it. Forget everything else. Sell everything else. Sell all the other truths, all the other things that you have followed, and follow that voice leading you, that you know is of love, that you know of as truth, that you sense that this is the path that you should walk in. Okay? And it says in verse 12, as a shepherd seeks out his flock on the day he is among, start over. As a shepherd seeks out his flock on the day he is among his scattered sheep, so will I seek out my sheep and deliver them from all the places where they were scattered on a cloudy and dark day. That darkness, the lies, that scatters you. It causes confusion and chaos and hardship and all these things. But he's coming now, and that's what he's doing right now, is he's gathering to be that good shepherd, to give us the truth perfectly, to feed us the bread of heaven perfectly. We should receive it. And in verse 15 it says, and I will feed my flock and I will make them lie down, says the Lord God. And that's when you know you're being fed by God himself, because you start growing in rest. He makes you lie down. His truths cause peace to come into your life, for rest to come into your life, and all the worries and the anxieties and the fears and all that to flee, because his perfect love dries out all of that. It starts covering you and just bringing you into a totally different place in your mind and in your spirit. That's part of the renewal of your mind, is when you start thinking in the ways of God, it creates a different life. You literally are having a new life being created for you. That's why you've got to let go of all the old ties and embrace the new and learn of him. This is a beautiful chapter, and I would go back and I would read that, because that shows you what he will do for you and what he is doing for you as you seek him to be that perfect shepherd in your life. And here's the other interesting thing about the verse that I read earlier about in 23 about his servant David, because this is part of the role of those who are gaining the light as well, is that they also can breathe the words of life. That's the saints coming with Christ, is that as Christ is coming, he's coming in them. So as he is, it's like the holy angels, that pure, beautiful spirit, that angel spirit in you, right? That's that pure spirit of God. When Christ comes, he's coming with those vessels that have been prepared. So as those people start to speak, they're speaking the words of life. That light is beginning to shine. And so those are also part of shepherding the people. But as I said, it's this dual dynamic between Christ coming in you and that outward shepherding by that same spirit. It's like you're kind of getting it from both sides. So if you're coming from within, then you're going to have the discernment about those that are in the light. Remember, I talked about that in another video, how you have to have that connection with God and that true spirit and the wisdom of God, then you can start discerning others. But then you'll have those others of light. And when you have those who have gone before you and can encourage you or confirm things that you are learning from God himself, the bread that you're being fed right by the Spirit of truth, then that is a powerful dynamic in helping you grow, because that's a great confirmation and a confidence builder and confirmation, because it's testifying to the Spirit in you by the Spirit that you see in them and the words that they're speaking. And so those words can add life and encourage that life to grow up in you. That's why it says the mouth of the righteous is like a wellspring. It is a fountain of life, because the life is in them. So that's what they're pouring forth. So that's also a dynamic of what happens in these days as his Spirit is returning, because it returns in us. So it comes in us, and then it can go out to others. So it's this dual process, this dual side. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing that God does for us, that he has given to us, and this is why the elect can't be deceived, okay? Because it's coming from within. They're not looking without. When everybody's saying, look here, look there, no, they know the kingdom of heaven is his reign within you, and that's the communion that you seek, and out of that grows your life. Out of that, the world is changed. And so understanding that, and that's their guide, they're not going to be deceived by an outside force because they don't even look to that. But those outside forces, those outside images, and all those things are going to be so powerful that if you didn't have this, it would just lead you astray. And they are. I mean, you see that happening, okay? It's amazing how many people, when they don't have this, how stuck they are in certain philosophies, no matter how apparent it is that they're harmful, all right? That's how strong that is. That's why you got to have that inner communion and foster that with God and look to the Good Shepherd, which is Christ in you, teaching those truths and letting govern you by those truths. The perfect bread of heaven. Let him feed you. And then as you let him feed you, you will find others that are also being fed by him, and you will have a connection with them and a beautiful communion with them because you're all of the same spirit. That's how you know. Till next time, keep stirring the deep. It's the one thing that changes everything else.